What is remarkable about public discussion on Brexit since the 2016 referendum is that it has focused on the wrong things. The divorce bill is politically toxic but fiscally irrelevant. Paying it off as a lump sum would put the UK net debt GDP ratio up from 87% to 90%, the ratio having been 48% in 2008. The toxicity stems in part from decades of the UK complaining about making huge contributions to Brussels, when net contributions are only about 1% of UK public spending. There is no Brexit dividend for public spending. The macroeconomic effects of Brexit on the public finances will be much larger, for example, due to sterling depreciation. My personal view is that the UK should make a lump sum payment to avoid decades of entanglement with EU decisions. These will concern liabilities such as EU staff pensions. Another issue is contingent liabilities in relation to the future writing off of loans to off-budget EU entities and third parties. A clean break would enable any future financial relationship, such as for research and security collaboration, to be contractually based and financially transparent. This will be stated to be politically impossible because the numbers would look too big. Also, the EU27 and the UK government have their own reasons to avoid fiscal transparency. This is a period of massive uncertainties. One scenario is that Brexit will galvanise the UK economy in the long term, freed from EU regulation and the European welfare state model. Another scenario is that Brexit does long-term damage to UK economic growth and productive capacity, thereby producing an affordability crisis for public spending. Whichever scenario, the UK public expenditure climate will be harsh in the short and medium term. Tax revenue generation faces multiple threats. The revolt of the rich has territorial as well as interpersonal dimensions. There is stagnant measured productivity. Yet the economy is running close to full capacity, so higher public spending would have to be financed by higher taxation, and resources must be transferred to exports. These pressures will affect the devolved block grants that are controlled by the Barnett formula. Of immediate concern to all three devolved nations is what happens after Brexit to what is currently EU spending in their jurisdictions. The Scottish and Welsh governments have jointly accused the UK government of a power grab in the field, for example of agriculture, which is more EU subsidised there than in England. This is a reflection of the tension between the necessity for common frameworks across the UK and the fact that the UK Parliament and government sees devolved institutions as subordinate legislatures and governments, not as equal partners. In the long term, it is not clear whether present levels of subsidy will be maintained. Trade negotiations with the EU and international agreements might constrain subsidy policy. In the short term, the subsidy money could be held centrally by the Treasury or allocated to the devolved administrations as annually managed expenditure outside the bloc, or put into the Barnett-controlled bloc. If put into the blocs, past Treasury practice indicates that existing spending will be transferred into the spending, future changes in England then producing positive or negative Barnett consequentials. In future, subsidies for sheep would directly compete in devolved budgets with salaries for nurses. This is the risk from Barnettising agricultural spending, not that existing spending would immediately go down to the Barnett proportions. This vivid example illustrates the consequences of Brexit for the devolution settlement.